Welcome to the Blossoming Wisdom podcast. Join us in conversation as we trace the path from the earth to the sky, exploring the traditions of magic, mysticism, healing, and devotional practice. Enjoy the episode. Today's episode, we're going to go through a short and sweet introduction so that those who are listening and following can get to know us a little bit more beyond our conversations that we have. And so with that, I want to start with Chandra. So Chandra, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your work? And then we have a couple of questions that we want to ask you.
Okay, I am Italian. I am right now in Rome, where I was born, and I came back to live recently. And before I was traveling around a lot. I actually came in contact with my first yoga class through music because I was a singer, like in a very 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 unprofessional way, and then from there I decided never to stop um, practicing. But when I found Kundalini yoga a couple of years later, that was really a lightning bolt, and that brought me to become very committed and in a way for a while also quite superstitious about it. I'm making it too long, I'm sorry. Anyways, it really went on for years and it's still going on, and I started to teach. It kind of happened. So this is what I'm doing. And besides, I love to draw. I always did. And these two things somehow connected. So most of my drawings, illustrations that I work with are coming from this practice or this space of meditation. And it's a joy to bring things together and not keep them separated as if they would be in contrast. So I'm quite happy with my profession right now. Yes, this is it.
So you're living in Italy. You've lived all over the world or in many countries.
A couple, not many, I would say.
Okay, and you are an illustrator that uses meditation as the ignition, as your fire of inspiration. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Chandra also is quite hilarious. And maybe this is also expressed through her art. And actually, Chandra, I don't even know when I first met you. I feel like I've always known you. I know
Oh,
that there
wow.
was a moment when we met in this particular lifetime, but I know it's kind of a blur. Like somehow we just came close.
Yes, it's true. It just felt very spontaneous and natural, and we just got each other, um, both on the spiritual side and on the other kind of punk side.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Okay, I have a question for you. So I would like to hear from you. What was your greatest lesson that you've learned so far in your practice?
So I really am convinced, and maybe I'm wrong, but I'm really convinced that right now the biggest lesson is to relax and to just let it be, and that there is nothing that I really need to do or to accomplish. And I'm still learning this lesson. I don't think I fully grasped it, because otherwise I would be less stressed by now. And but yes, this is it. So it's very simple, and it's so simple that sometimes you don't see how important it is. and how life changing it is to relax. And I certainly was told about this by myself, but by our teacher Gurudev Singh through the Satnam Rasayan practice and through what he really said to me, and I didn't have any idea what it meant, of course, and probably I still don't have, but there was an input from him about this, about just there is no thing to really do. You can relax. You should.
That's maybe one episode we have to unpack how to relax. That's actually that's a big task. Okay, I want to know, where do you feel your most natural self? Is it in nature? Is it when you're in your art, or is it in your practice? Where do you feel your most natural self?
Well, I was thinking about this for a moment and putting away everything that I'm supposed to reply to this. I would say I'm supposed to because of my inner observer, not because anybody is looking and saying, oh, but you should say this. But I would say in nature. Lately, I feel that being in nature, like hiking in the Dolomites, where part of my family comes from, just heals everything. And I just switch immediately to this state of being very, yeah, very receptive and very present and full of joy for everything I see and hear and smell. So this is the most direct way I find right now, because with art, I'm working on this very specifically, but sometimes there is always this intellectual self coming through and telling you, yeah, but what will people say if you show them this or that? Is it really uh, interesting if you publish this? You know, a lot about showing, because we use so much Instagram to show our work, at least I do. And so sometimes I feel like I'm a little bit conditioned by this. And with meditation, with practice, it certainly shifts my state. But just lately, nature feels more immediate in this sense. Yeah.
Thank you. And my last question for you is, what do you look for when seeking out a teacher or teachings? Like, what is the traits that really are important to you?
So I never seeked out for a teacher or teachings ever. It just everything happened in any ways, and but I would say that I am attracted to people who teach with humor and lightness and kind of with joy, having fun, and that are seeing people for who they are and not asking them to adapt to some kind of standard or higher personality model. No, because sometimes this happens, or it feels like maybe there are teachers who are not directly saying you should do this, you should do that, you should wear this, you should, no, but you feel that you have to, in order to be there, in order to grasp the teachings. Well, I feel that this kind of lifestyle stuff is sometimes actually distracting you from the core. Not always, because a lot of like this kind of if we talk about the Kundalini yoga, now wearing a turban, I couldn't teach without it. I don't mean these kind of things, because these things you use them not because of some rule or some way of showing off who you belong to, no, or where you belong to. You do it because you feel that it's helpful for transmitting something or for being present in that moment, for just doing what you need to do in the moment. uh, I mean more this kind of environments in which you feel that you should, that you are wrong if you are not vegetarian, that you are wrong if you smoke a cigarette. I am vegetarian and I don't smoke, but still, this kind of feeling that you have to adapt to a certain standard of human life in order to um, get the teachings. So I liked, again, somebody who's very relaxed and recognizes that everybody has their own lifestyle and they still can be very good meditators and they still can do some good to others and they still deserve to receive teachings.
Thank you. Monica?
Yes, I also have questions. Yes. Chandra, I love how you combine or integrate meditation with illustration. And I don't know what has been happening recently, but your recent illustrations, I think, have been embodying that integration more, at least to me. So I was wondering if you can tell us a little bit about your process integrating these two aspects, and also if you also if you feel that what you feel that your art practice gives back to your meditation practice, and what impact has your meditation practice in your art.
Yes. So I don't know exactly how it happened, uh, but I feel that I was doing this kind of translation even before discovering yoga. Um, was feeling situations or emotions or sensations or the energy of a place or people or a memory, and just trying to make it visual in a very personal way, of course, because I am not such a I'm not so like a great skilled artist. No, I never studied art in any way. I studied architecture, that maybe helped, maybe actually the opposite. But so just having it flowing, and then when I was meditating more, it happened that I felt just like grasping a pen and making a sketch. And when I decided to put more effort into this, I started to share these drawings, but they were not very spontaneous, because they were actually very spontaneous. But then I worked on them with the computer to add colors and transparencies and other stuff, so they still had that connection, but they were then very precisely elaborated the way I wanted them to be. And what I'm working on lately is to really let it go and not having control on what the result is, or not having an idea, and not correcting mistakes. You know what I mean? Like the things that you feel that are mistakes, but who can say that that line is a mistake actually? No, is another way of letting go of your expectations, and letting go of your projection on how things should be. So letting go of control over reality somehow. So I'm trying to cultivate this spontaneous way, and um, I feel that it's really evolving in that sense. So there is this part that maybe is not, you don't produce something that you feel like, oh, I want to, make prints out of them, or make an exhibition out of them, or make anything that is then again something that people see and recognize, and then they have a view on you. Maybe it's more a personal work, even though I share them. um, but I feel that this is also giving back then again to the meditation practice, because it is a way of being with what is there without trying to change it, without trying to repress it, and recognizing when your thoughts are taking over and saying, no, this should be like this, or you did it wrong, and self-judgment. And so it's the same kind of process. And this I learned actually while doing, actually I did a couple of courses. There was this course of life drawing when I was studying architecture, and I used to go there. And actually, I started as a model. I didn't draw. I was just, I don't know why, how it happened. I needed money, something. So, and I felt like there was this deep meditative space with all the people drawing. And I felt it was so relaxing to just stay still for 40 minutes straight, like naked in front of all the people. It doesn't seem like something relaxing, but it was. And then I tried to draw myself the next semester. And when I started to draw myself, it was a nightmare, because all these thoughts came. Oh, you're not good enough, everybody else is better, the technique you chose this time is not the one you should choose, and like all these kind of self-judgment moments. And then anyways you went through it, and anyways you made a drawing. So it was a process of self-observation, very honest and very frustrating and very heavy, not very intense. But I think this is also what we go through when we meditate. So when we don't expect everything to be peace and love and light and angels, but you also go through the things that you think that shouldn't be there in that moment because you're meditating. So here I really feel an interaction or a parallel. And maybe now I also ask a question to you, Monica.
Mm-hmm.
And this would be, I remember when we met, you were living in Berlin because you were studying visual anthropology, like taking a master. And I wonder what inspired you to get into these studies and to cultivate this path with the video and studying the traditions through this mean.
Yeah. Um, yeah, when I started my university studies, I did my degree in design, in integrated design. But the more I did, I studied all sorts of design. And the more I was studying, the more I was leaning towards video, because I think since I was little, I had this fascination with capturing memories. I was like, this is so beautiful. I have to make sure I record it. It's just like an interesting fascination with photography and video. And then as I was deepening my studies on this field, everybody that was looking at what I was producing, they were saying like, "Oh, this is like really anthropological." Because of my upbringing in the south of Mexico, I was always documenting rituals or events that had to do with tradition, just because that was my environment. And then I realized like something clicked, and then I realized, oh, maybe I can go deeper into this specific field, how to approach documenting something that's really anthropological. But yeah, but in essence, I was really fascinated with just recording moments and making memories last.
Monica, with that, maybe you want to tell us a little bit about you?
Yes, my name is Mónica Toledo Fraginals, and I'm from Mexico. I'm from the south of Mexico. I'm from Oaxaca, and I studied design. I studied documentary filmmaking and visual anthropology. And on the other side of my personality, I guess, I've also studied a lot of different healing traditions. And this is how we also, the three of us, met. I was doing the studies and practicing Kundalini yoga, and I was traveling to Europe for my visual anthropology studies. So this is how we connected.
And Monica, I have a question for you. So, with you coming from the tradition and family of healers, like I know that all of us through our as we grow older, we find our own identity, like our own space within something, right? So the natural thing is for a child to rebel against the parents, but your mom's a healer, so, and you study healing. So I want to ask you, what was like your first, or what was your first experience or your memory where you discovered your own relationship and practice with magic and with healing?
Sometimes it's sometimes when you try to pinpoint a specific moment, for me it's difficult, especially when everything you knew as a child was part of that. Like, yeah, my mom was a healer, but everybody in the town were healers and artists. So it's like you're like, this is just life. And I'm gonna answer your question, but just to give you an example. And my mom, she had to find her own path as a healer when we were really young. And I think by her doing that, that got infused into ourselves in a very natural way. Like we were her guinea pigs for everything, and it was just normal. And I'm gonna go back to your question, but a friend of, like a really, really good friend of mine from high school, I saw him recently, and he was reminding me that when we were like 16, he came to my house in Oaxaca, and he's like, he has nothing to do with spirituality. And so when we were 16, he came to my house in Oaxaca, and we brought, my mom and I brought him to see this healer. And I was like, I don't remember that. And I was asking him, why were we like, why did we do that? It doesn't make sense because it's something in our family we will do all the time. But for him, that was not like, he just came to visit. I was like, this doesn't make sense. But at the same time, it totally makes sense because that's something we would do. And then I was asking him, like, what his experience was. And I was like, what did you think about that? And he said, like, it was like, I just saw it like something normal because it would be something that you would do. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. So I think, going back to your question, this is a work in progress for me to step into actually that, say that, like, I'm a healer, because it's something that I've always been without trying to do anything. And I don't say that in a pretentious way, but it's just the little things you do on a daily basis, And it's really, really a work in progress, and I have a really hard time like kind of taking that step forward. But that doesn't mean I don't recognize it's in me, or I haven't recognized it in different moments. I think I'm not answering your question, but it's just
No,
about
but
like
you're
my life
telling a
experience.
beautiful. But was there a moment where you said, "Oh, this is my own relationship. It doesn't
It's
it's
always been, even if it was
yes?"
coming from my mom, it's how it informed my childhood. It wasn't her, and it wasn't just her. It, it was my grandma. And if we were sick, we will see everybody but the doctor. We never had a pediatric doctor. So it's like, but all of those things come into like one psychic, right? As a child. And then it's just your life experience. It's not that I was saying, like, this is my mom, or this is my grandmother, or this is like the healer outside. It was all outside, but it was always reflecting and integrating into my own experience. The interesting question is then what happens when you realize everybody else is a little bit different than you.
And I want to ask also, you also started to study with a teacher in the US. So that's also kind of interesting that you step out from like your Mexican traditions to study herbalism with somebody who is in the US. Can you explain how you met this teacher and what led you there?
Yeah, and talk about window shopping for teachings. I do a lot of that. I do a lot of window shopping for teachings. So, I met her through a really good friend of mine that is from Germany, and she studied. My friend studied with this teacher from the U.S. in Boulder, and she connected me to her. And even though I love my own traditions and my my origin, let's say, I always had this, and this is also going back with why I'm fascinated with documentary filmmaking, because I have this detective heart, or it's a mix between being a detective and being an explorer. If somebody has something interesting to say, and if it's different from what I know, that's really fascinating to me. And then I connected with this teacher of mine whose name is Marlo Brooks, but she's not an herbalist. She actually studied with a teacher of hers that studied with a lot of shamans in South America of how to use the energy of the plants. But that's also interesting how knowledge and spiritual paths go into these big cycles, because I'm coming from Latin America and her teacher learned from cultures in Latin America, and then she's teaching in the US, and then I find her and I really find fascinating with what she has to say.
Chandra, do you have any more questions for Moni?
Hmm. What would you see? Do you have I don't know, what do you see yourself? I have kind of the same question that you had for me. Like, how do you integrate these two paths? Maybe even in a sense, in a kind of practical sense, not like, because we tend to define ourselves, and sometimes we do it in compartments. No, yeah, there is that part
Yeah,
of me, and then there is that other part of me, just as you were just saying. So I was wondering how it works with your actual work and profession, and how it is
yeah,
interwoven with the spiritual research and the healing.
yeah. I I think meditation and filmmaking are really beautiful complements. Like I also, when I was studying I was feeling the most attracted to films that were very poetic, and films that are very poetic, you can get into a deep meditative space while you are watching them. And then you are also um, learning something about yourself. And I'm also really fascinated about what it means to be like a human, going back to just being a human and all its complexities. And I think sometimes when we sit in meditation, it's about contemplating all our all full humanity and all full spirituality. And sometimes when you see a film, you can get into that space. And I had a really good teacher that she was teaching script writing, and I will never forget this. But she said, if you go into a movie and by the end of the movie you don't feel like a different person, like it transforms you, then it's not fulfilling what a film should do. So there's a lot of things that you can pull apart, like personally, about how that combining these two tools can be very transformative. And then I also remember, I think I was joking with a friend of mine, because at some point, our teacher Gurudev, he said that as times when really, really crazy, you wouldn't have time to do a healing. Like you would have to do a healing on a person like in seconds. And I was trying to think how to bring that concept into visual media, and I was like, maybe there's something, or there's a film that you can make that only lasts like a minute, and then you can change a person. But anyway, I'm
Oh,
getting really in
wow.
my head now, but there's a lot of things that can speak to each other in these two disciplines, I think.
Probably we will have to make an episode about the intersection of art and spirituality.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's gonna be fun.
Yes. Because too, Chandra, like with your artwork, I'm also a great admirer. You know, I know many people are, you know, in that, you know, this, and I believe that you can do this, make an image and a little film that would heal something. I got goose pimples when you said that because I was like, oh yeah, that could work. Wow, I'm trying to think like, oh, let's work. I want to be a part of that. I want to see that happen. I want to support you. I want to champion that cause because I think it's totally possible. And Chandra, you know, with your art, like I love it. You know it. I've been after you to make me Baba City Trend like pajamas for like I don't know how many years. But
Oh,
um, you know, like so there's this way also too, like where you capture the essence of something that just resonates with so many. And I think that's such a beautiful you too being visual artists, like how you actually move people with that. Wonderful. Any more questions for Moni? No?
now we have to have a very long conversation about all of this.
Yes, I think so.
It already opened up a door.
Yes, it starts to open up.
But for you, it would be nice to hear from you now.
Okay, I will just say so. My name is Siri Prakash, and I am an astrologer. I practice Jyotisha, which is commonly referred to as Vedic astrology. It's the science of light, um, and I've always been an astrologer. I studied first with Western astrology because I had this image when I was a little kid that I could swim in the stars. I thought that's my environment, so I knew. Um, you know, I'm a punk rock kid. That's my origins, and for me, this punk rock experience was deeply spiritual and life saving. So, it still is. You know, I have a deep connection with that part of my history and with the musicians and the poets and authors. They were really like my best friends in times where I really needed to find myself. You know, so David Bowie, I consider like my family, you know, because he just, for me, he's kind of also too like a god, you know. So a lot of this punk rock is also part of my DNA and also who I am today. Still can be quite rebellious, but I'm a Vedic astrologer, a Jyotisha. I live in Germany, so I've lived in Europe since 1999, but I'm a California kid, you know, but a polar bear at heart. And it's right, actually. Probably because my parents sent me to Denmark every summer for the summers to go visit with grandparents, so I avoided the sun. So maybe I'm a vampire too. Who knows? Or a child of the night. But this is who I am. So that's about me.
Can you tell us a bit about how you, I don't know, how it was, the coming in contact with Vedic, because it's not only astrology, is much more than that. There are so many other practices that you have been studied in this realm, traveling to India. So I would like to know a little more about this story, and also about how after this traveling and being kind of immersed in this, how you dealt with integrating all these teachings that you received into your everyday life.
You know, there's 6 limbs of the Veda, so I really study on Jyotisha. And I also studied on the Vastu sciences, so this healing and transforming of spaces, and on mantras. And you know, for me, this integration, you know, there's a secret language that's spoken by nature that's happening all the time. It's this divine communion. I've known this since I was little. I always knew that the universe and the stars and the sun and the moon were part of my field of nature, all of our field of nature. So this integration for me as a Jyotishi and as a is that, you know, they're not rocks in space. They're expressions of the divine. They're actually divine beings. So as part of my practice, I worship them every single day. I commune with them every single day. And I see how what they call the karma phalam, which is these fruits where they deliver things. And I think that by studying this mediums of light, you know, like we were talking about in one of the episode, all of these unnatural lights that Chandra, you were mentioning in the birth room, there's fluorescent lights. You know, even as we speak now, we have unnatural light, you know, that blocks out this natural light. So once we just sit and we contemplate these mediums of lights in space that reveal the fruits of not only this lifetime, but of previous lifetimes, and discover through ourselves the divine. This is a really deep part of my practice every single day, to understand it more. You know, how I can see Saturn expressing himself through birds, how I can see Mars expressing himself through bitter plants. You know, so it's not just this rock in space that's torturing, but how it expresses here within us and on this plane. And I think that, you know, and as we were talking in the previous episode about spiritual materialism and coming to 3HO, you know, when I moved in with Yogi Bhajan, you know, I brought Ganesh with me. I've worshipped Ganesh since I was 12 years old. You know, it was not like an allowed thing to bring, you know, but he said it's okay. And he was like, great, now we have to take care of it. And I said, no, not you, me. It's mine. It's not yours. Yes. You know, so this is also part of my practice, you know, like I think that there's certain parts of the divine that expresses through different deities that open different centers of consciousness and awareness and teaching. And I think that it's just nature. It's not even something special, but like you say, we're drowned out by artificial lights, so we don't see. I don't know if I answered your question. You know, I think that in my times in India and living in India, I think that I've been so blessed in my lifetime to have really good teachers. And I am so blessed that I have so much courage that I took a leap not knowing. So even my time with every teacher has really taken a lot of courage to just say yes. There was no other option for me because I wanted to do it, but it also took a lot of courage because I also had a lot of opportunity to live in a different way, if that makes sense. That was very seductive and attractive to do. But, you know, I took this leap of faith because I believe in something greater outside of myself. I believe that I'm greater than this expression that I have of this physical body, that it's only teaching me something. So I'm really curious to discover that. And I really enjoy the Vedic and also in tantric studies that it's very systematic and that it also challenges thought. So it's not just drinking the Kool-Aid. Like I like this rigorous testing because there's sciences. It's not just made up whatever woo-woo stuff. It's like very challenged. And then once you know it, so for example, you know, I practice and every year through these 9 nights of the goddess, we recite this Devi Mahatmyam, these prayers. And you have to go through initiation, and it's this learning of these mantras and these shlokas, you know, and then you have to earn it to learn it. You have to qualify to do it in a way to have a certain stability, you know, because they don't want to just waste their time if you're not going to do something. They're not just going to give it to you like a gumball machine. And then, you know, you have the experience of it because it's done systematically the same for thousands of years. It has this kind of proven rhythm. And I enjoy that about the Vedic studies and also the tantric. So like this with, look, we were discussing with I like the thoughtfulness, even listening to Dr. Nita, who I've never studied with. I've just like read a lot of his articles, taken some things online, which I don't think really amounts to studying with him, and, read, but I really like the thoughtfulness of it, that to really like this paying attention. So I try and integrate that into my life, even simply how I'm relating with animals, not even making a spiritual thing out of it, but just open up your mind to receive more information and allow it to communicate with you. Read that space and see what it is, and do it in a split second, if that makes sense. Maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe I just sound weird now, which I'm totally fine with, because
No,
that's who I am.
actually, I was just thinking that this is something that we have in common, probably all the three of us. Monica was talking in a previous episode about this being human, and like just looking on one hand for the, not even looking, but like feeling, or in a way, yes, searching for, in a way, just feeling that is there, the essence. What are we doing here? Why are we here? And on the other hand, looking at the vastness, like the really, really small point of essence of everything, and the vast infinite universe. Like these are things that we are all interested in, and probably this is how we connected also to do this podcast together.
Because I think so. I mean, I believe, I don't think, I believe that people travel in packs. So I know the people I feel connected with, it's not the first time. It's just even I think everything, I think for sure I know I've known both of you before. This I know. Because how easy things just kind of come in. There was not a push, not a force. And also, even outside of the podcast, this is also why we do this, is because our conversations naturally go into this direction. So I know that there's something there between the three of us. But I think that, through our experience, even in the study of this, like, when we open our eyes in the morning, this is our moon expressing itself. So it's really Brahma and Saraswati. So if we look at the Trimurti, right? So it's Brahma and Saraswati. As soon as our eyes open, our movie starts to play. It starts to create, right? And then Vishnu and Lakshmi are sustaining it. They're sustaining this creation. And then we close our eyes at night and we have a little death. And this is Shiva and Shakti destroying, right? So we can look through these stories of the gods, how they manifest through our experience of this creation, sustaining, destruction every single day, and then how we're actually trying to use those expressions. It's a very interesting thing for me in practice and to chew on for a while.
Siri, and I have one last question. Because you have this really deep personal practice that you are just sharing with us now, but I always find it beautiful when you tell us everything that you've learned, that you've experienced. Like when you put all of that knowledge, let's say, I don't know, you want to call it knowledge outside, you have such a beautiful way to do it. And you're also very artistic and sensitive person in this way. So my question, I hope it's not too open, but where does your inspiration comes when you are putting a class together, or when you are trying to share all of this that you've learned within? Where do you find inspiration to then communicate it outside of you? Does that make sense?
Um, I think I try not to interfere with people. So even when I'm reading their chart, um, because I think that even in classes, I'm very aware that when people come, often it's because they feel a sense of emptiness, loss, or they need to feel something. So for me, it feels like a big duty in a way that I have to honor that person. Because also, when I'm reading a chart, I also know that I'm talking to divinity. I'm reading a language and I'm talking to their gods expressing in their map. So I'm very um, aware of that. And I'm very sensitive to people, even in classes when they'll come. And I'm also cautious with what I say if I'm posting something, because you never know how it will touch people. Because usually when people are looking for something spiritual or guidance, they're vulnerable. And I take that very seriously, because my job is not to inflict hurt on people. What I really want to do is provoke people to think. I want to provoke people to actually open their own awareness, maybe just by giving them some tastes of things, that they go, oh yeah, it's like this. And then they can continue with their, Brahma and Saraswati and Lakshmi and Vishnu and Shiva and Shakti experience of creation and this. So I think for me, in the inspiration is to not actually, is actually also to be weird, I must say, because I'm just a weirdo. There's something about me that's also just odd. So it's this where I'm very aware I don't want to hurt somebody. I want to only give them a new idea that then they can run with. And I want to be a little cheeky. And I think with with this podcast too, because I think that we all have had really great experience with teachers and with finding good resources. I hope that also through our dialogues and our conversation, we can share resources with people if they choose to pick up and learn. So books and authors and because there's just so much noise out there that part of when I'm writing about something or I'm teaching about something, I want to give them a resource that they can then run with it, because I was gifted that in some way. I hope that answered your question.
I feel that it is so good to talk with you, also because we all really want clarity, and we don't want to create smoke and mirrors. We actually want to kind of I don't know how it's said in English, but to send away the smoke when it's possible, or how our shared teacher Gurudev used to say, to clean the window so you can look outside. It's not about making a new house, no? Sometimes or always it's just how it is. You are who you are, and you connect with what you connect to. It's not like, oh, I should be, because sometimes it's also a bit like this, like you want to have control of your spiritual path and saying, I want to be this kind of person, so I'm gonna pick this kind of practice that makes me feel like I'm becoming the kind of person I want to become, or something like this, no? So it's very superficial, and and sometimes it just comes and it's something unexpected and makes you work on a side of you that you would have never chosen to look into. And I feel that we all have this genuine wish for an authentic research and for connection and for making things more simple and clear, because they actually are kind of simple and clear. It's just a little bit of distraction and confusion everywhere.
I fully agree. I fully agree. But I would also add to it that something that maybe only in the last like maybe 8 years is really this like side of the dark, you know? And I think that it's something also I'm interested to not be afraid of teaching people, you know? How it's so much a part of our experience. Why do we have to pretend it's not there? It just becomes this lack of integration, like Kali. Even if you look at Kali as one of the expressions, right, of the Shakti, the one that's portrayed the most is actually not even Kali. That's not even her form. And it's so misunderstood. But, the Shakti was needed to awaken Vishnu, right? So it's like everything is needing this opposite, this polarization, right? So the male and the female, the light and the dark, even if we watch how the moon goes, and then the sun rises, even as women, we try to live our life as the sun when actually our power is the night. It's the receptivity, so this is something for me that's also like really interesting to really like work through, this darkness not being evil, but as part of this transforming destruction that's required. Because you can't walk into a new space without destroying something. It doesn't happen. You can't carry everything with you. Some things drop off. And I know, as I mentioned before, and I know teachers, they only reveal this much because the limitation that we all have to take in, So if we get this much of this much, how much do we really know? And then the universe is infinite. So why should we all try and be an expert? We're all actually just children. We're still children in so many ways.
It's nice to be children. I like
It
it.
is.
There is so much more freedom, and in the same way, I feel what you were saying about not avoiding sharing what you know, or putting yourself in a position of responsibility because of what you learned. This
Right.
is a whole process too, because, and somebody told me once, and that really struck me. I don't even remember when it was, but somebody told me, the fact that you behave so insecure, the fact that you always say, no, I'm not able to do that, I cannot do this, I cannot put myself up there and say this or teach this, or it's another kind of camouflage of the ego,
Mm.
because you want also people to, in a way, you want also people to tell you, but no, of course not, no.
Yeah, it's a total hook.
And on the other hand, yeah, you want to just be reassured, and you want to like really sometimes dwell in your drama, or in your stories, and you don't want to really get out, because then you have to stop telling yourself stories. And I feel this podcast, for me, was a big leap, because I felt like, first of all, compared to you, I'm like, I don't know anything. Second of all, and don't say no now. And second of all, I felt like, what do I have to say that is kind of interesting? But this formula that we felt together, about just sharing what would be a normal conversation among us.
Right.
This, even though sometimes in the first times I felt nervous, I felt like, again, what do I have to say about this? I have nothing interesting to say, these thoughts coming back. Still, it feels like something very genuine and very natural. And so this is for me the great value of this project that we are creating together and sharing.
Yes. But I think I think I think Chandra, I learned so much from you, and Monica, I learned so much from you, and I know that in all our like chats on the phone, we send each other things. Oh, look at this, or look at this. Even sometimes we're cheeky, especially me and Chandra, not
No,
Monica, because she's
Monica,
too
not.
sweet. So it's like we send some things like, oh, come on. I mean, so definitely. I think I'm very happy, and this is something I really look forward to have these conversations with you guys every week. It's truly a gift for me to do this with you. Wonderful. Any final words? No? Silence? Contemplation? Great. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in and listening. Please share this podcast with anyone you think is interested. Check us out on YouTube, on Spotify, our Instagram. We'll have the links to all of our websites and contact information. If you want to know any more information, or if you want to contact Chandra or Monica for an illustration or a healing, and we look forward to see you and hear you and speak with you in conversation in the comments. So please share your experience, who you are, where you're tuning in, where you're listening from, and if you have any suggestions for episodes. Take care, everybody. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Right, thank you.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please join in the conversation by leaving a comment and sharing your feedback and your experience. We'd love to hear from you. Take care, everybody.